Let's see. Oh, start the conversation. That's what I get paid for, basically. Most of my clients say to me, look, we just brought you in here to start the conversation on suicide, because it's one of those things that, although a goodly number of people die by suicide in the United States every year, hardly anybody talks about it. Talking about it a little more now during the pandemic, the stay in place, the isolation, the social distancing, but not near enough for the number of people who die by suicide in the U.S. every year. This is one of my favorite Martin Luther King quotes. And I think suicide matters. My goal is to work myself out of a job. They go, look, nobody's doing it anymore. You're going to have to quit. Fine, I'll retire. Every year in the United States, 8 million people seriously contemplate suicide. 1.4 million attempt it. And 47,000 die by suicide. That's 1 every 11 minutes. That means at this moment, by the time we get done with this, somebody, more than one somebody in the United States will have taken their lives. This is also my job. You guys know Big and Rich, the singing duo? They have a song called Somebody's Got to Be Unafraid to Lead the Freak Parade. That's my job. By getting on stage, by being vulnerable, by sharing my story, that I live with major depressive disorder and chronic suicidal ideation, and that I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. I lead the freak parade. I give other people permission to give voice to their feelings and experiences surrounding mental illness and suicide without recrimination. That's truly my job. Again, starting the conversation. You might be asking yourself at this moment, if you're watching, a comedian talking about depression and suicide, how does that work? Well, that is my grandmother. We have something in our family called generational depression and suicide. My grandmother died by suicide. That's my mother on her lap. My mother found her. This is the eve of the Depression, by the way, this photograph. It's 1929. My grandmother's just been widowed, and she's got to get herself and these 3 kids through the Depression, through high school, through college, and she did. And she saw them all married off, and then with her job done, she ended her life. My mother found her. My mother couldn't reach her on the phone and was aware that she was struggling. So she drove over to the house. And my grandmother had taken care of everything, except, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember the milkman, but there was milk on the front stoop spoiling. That's the only thing my grandmother overlooked. She had written checks for the bills, addressed the envelope, stamped them, put them on the kitchen counter. She pinned her will to her housecoat so my mother could find it. She closed windows and doors, turned on the gas in the old gas stove, blew out the pilot light, and she sat down at the dining room table and wrote this note.